So, welcome everybody. This is a brand new course, a brand new season. And for today, I would like to do something incredibly important and incredibly powerful with you, which is to look at the most important question of all, which is how do we define our lives? And how do we define specifically the role that our lives play in the wider world? I think any person, if they're honest with themselves, will at some point look in the mirror and say, what does my life really mean in the big, vast scheme of things? The world is 60 billion years old, and in the passage of time, my life is just a fleeting 80, 90 years, please God, if not 120. Then do I make a difference? And am I making an impact? And Judaism has an incredibly important wealth of material and answer to this question. And that's what we are going to be looking at. And that's what we're going to be focusing on over the next 4 weeks. And I think one way into this subject is to realize that one of the greatest motifs in literature is the motif of the chosen hero. And just from popular culture, whether it is the story of King Arthur or Luke Skywalker, there seems to be again and again in literature, popular culture, a narrative that starts out as follows. There's a simple, ordinary person, nothing particularly special about them. And they are going around and about their lives only to have a chance meeting or occurrence that takes place that sets off a completely different trajectory that changes everything for them, whether it's King Arthur pulling out the sword from the anvil, revealing himself to be the new king, whether it's Luke Skywalker that is now found to be the last Jedi and saving the galaxy from an evil empire. This cultural phenomenon always seems to repeat itself, and it takes the world by storm. If you remember back, this is going back 20 years ago already, but do you remember when J.K. Rowling published Harry Potter? Do you remember the earthquake that she created in children's reading and translated into 80 languages or something like that? There was this just power in a little boy who was locked under the stairs, if you remember the beginning opening story, doubted by his aunt and uncle, who turns out to discover that he's a wizard. And he goes on not only to be a wizard, but to save the wizarding world from the forces of evil. Why do these stories have such a power? Why do these hidden and then discovered hero stories captivate all of society, all of humanity? And I think the answer is because every person can identify in the depths of their own souls that we are that special person, that we too feel that we're part of God's plan, that each of us is necessary, that each of us is striving for something more, striving for something bigger. And ultimately, we believe, we might not articulate it, we might not always be convinced of the truth, but when we see it in a play, in art, in literature, in a movie, when we come across the narrative, it stirs a very deep part of our souls, because I think deep down we all realize or remember, I'm here for a reason. My life has purpose. There's something that only I can do. This is part of a larger narrative that I play a role in. This is just by way of introduction. Is this resonating? Does this sound familiar? Is this something? we might have to uncover it. We might have to remind ourselves of it. Sometimes we look back in the mirror and we might feel, what am I doing with myself? What am I doing with my life? But once we uncover it, or perhaps through learning about this course, we can discover that yes, each person is incredibly valuable. Each person is exceptionally needed, important, and plays a role in the big scheme of things. So I'd like to look at some classic Jewish sources with you, and we'll see what Judaism has to say, and we'll make our way through. So let's take a look. Let's take a look as we jump in, and we find ourselves. Sorry, not that one. Let me try that again. Want to go to that one. Hang on. Sorry about this. Okay. Here we go. We start with the Talmud. Can you see my screen? Big enough? You can see? Okay. This is a statement from the Talmud. I'm not going to tell you where this comes from. I'll ask you where you think this comes from afterwards. Take a look at the following. Therefore, Lafikach Nivra Adam Yechidi. A human being was created alone on this earth. This is why Adam was created alone in the Garden of Eden. Lamdecha shekol hama'abed nefesh achat ma'aleh alav hakatuv ke'ilu ibad olam maleh. It's to teach us that destroying one life is tantamount to destroying an entire world. And by the same token, v'kol hamakayim nefesh achat, anybody who saves one life, ma'aleh alav hakatuv ke'ilu kayam olam maleh, it is tantamount to sustaining an entire world. Lafikach, therefore, kol echad ve'echad chayav lomar bishvili nivra ha'olam. Each and every individual is obligated to say, the world was created for my sake. Amazing, amazing. Now I want to break this down because there's a number of pieces that I want to tease out of this. Number one, does anybody know the context of where this Talmudic passage appears? Does anyone want to take a guess? So listen to the following. I think you'll find this fascinating. This passage appears in the Talmud connected to the section that deals with capital cases and the courts sentencing a person to death. Isn't that interesting? Capital cases and the courts sentencing a person to death. And what are we told? We are told that prior to taking a person's life, the courts absolutely must be reminded. This is talking to the judges. And it's telling them, remember just how precious an individual life is. If you make a mistake, it's going to destroy an entire world. Because one person is an entire world. And then we say this to the defendant. Are you and the witnesses that are coming forward in a capital case, are you absolutely sure about your testimony? Realize on the basis of your words right now, we're going to potentially put a person to death or not. Are you absolutely sure? But look again at the very last part of that. The very last part of that statement says, therefore, every individual is obligated to say, Bishvili nivra ha'olam. The whole world was created for my sake. Can you see that? The whole world was created for my sake. What does that mean? That means that when you get out of bed in the morning, this whole world was for you. Isn't that incredible? This whole world was created for you. This is telling us the precious, important value of every single human being. Now, of course, everybody is saying, for me, the world was created. For me, the world was created. Not in an egotistical fashion, but rather with a sense of, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to make with your life? What are you going to achieve? What are you going to achieve? And twinned with this source is the next one. Take a look at the next one. Also a passage from the Talmud. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Afilu bishvil sadik echad ha'olam kayam. The world can exist in the merit of one single righteous person. Shenema v'sadik yasod olam. As it's written, a righteous person is the foundation of the world. Look, when we look at the world today, it feels like it's going down the toilets, unfortunately. There is so much that is troubling with this world. I'm not going to give you the list. You've probably been watching CNN and Fox News already today. Don't know if that's the best thing to do in these days. Maybe we shouldn't be watching the news. But there are so many worrisome realities, and of course, nothing more worrisome than our brothers and sisters in Israel, the hostages, the war, the soldiers, the chayalim, the situation. And that's before we get to America's upcoming election in November. God help us. So the state of the world is in a difficult place. The Talmud says there could be one righteous person living on this planet, and it's in the merit of that one righteous person that the entire world continues to exist. God looks down. Let's think about this. Let's unpack this for a moment. God's looking down, and what's he saying? He's saying, Oy vavoy, what a world. Look at what humanity has achieved. I've given them so much. They've had such tremendous breakthroughs in science, in technology, in medicine, in advancement, in the way they create their infrastructure, just roads and transportation and aeroplanes. You can get on a metal tube and be on the other side of the planet in hours. Given them such advances in communication, you can be standing in Australia and speak to somebody holding a piece of plastic in your hand, looking into your phone, and they're standing in California. And yet, what's the world looking like? And God says, you know what? There's one person, they're sitting at home in Montreal right now. The whole world is sustained just for that one person. There's a good person, maybe they're in Florida right now. Maybe they're in California right now. I don't know where they are. But wherever you might be, I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking to you. Maybe you're the very reason the whole world is still standing. And amazingly, Maimonides goes on to say, let's take a look at the next source. Maimonides goes on to say, this is the psychology we should all have when looking at ourselves. Maybe you're in Vancouver right now. Thank you. Maybe this is the psychology sorry, not maybe. This is the psychology we should all have when we walk through the world. Maimonides says a person should see themselves as if they're the reason that the world continues to exist. Let's take a look at the next source. This is a very powerful source. Maimonides, speaking in Hilchot Teshuvah, the laws of repentance. It's interesting that this should be found in the laws of repentance. Let's take a look at what he says. Sarech kol adam, every single person needs shir'e atzmo kol hashana kulo, to see themselves the whole year through. every day, not just on Rosh Hashanah when you walk into shul, not just on Yom Kippur, but even in February, in early winter, the middle to early part of February. And what should you look at yourself? Ki'ilu chatzav zakai v'chatzia chayav. As if they are half meritorious and half guilty. You are balanced perfectly at the 50-50% point. And therefore, asay chat. If you were just to do one good deed, one positive act, הרי הכריע את עצמו ואת כל העולם לכף זכות. What would you do with your one good deed? You will tip the balance favorably for both yourself and for the entire world. And he takes this so seriously. Look at his next words. V'gorem lo v'lehem teshua v'hatzalah. And you will bring both for you and for the whole world salvation and deliverance. Let me stop there. Ladies, what do you think? What do you think? Do you think you could do this? Do you think you could do this? How about today? Let's try today. What do you think? Whatever you're going to do today, whatever your day looks like, whatever you have next, I'm going to include myself in this as well. And I'm going to say, I'm going to view myself as 50-50. Yes, done some great things. Yes, done some less than wonderful things. I'm at equilibrium right now. I'm 50-50. I'm half-half. And I'm going to walk through the rest of my day with the consciousness that the very next good deed that I perform, I'm going to tip the scales for me, and I'm going to tip the scales for the entire world. What do you think? Do you think you're possible of going through a day like that? Let me hear from you. Unmute yourselves. I want to hear some feedback so far. We've looked at 3 sources. What do you think? Is this wishful thinking? Is this too hard? Is this too much? Is this aiming for the stars?
Yeah, you're aiming for the stars, but it's possible. Everything is possible. It's within your command to do good.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Terry, what do you think?
I think that, look, I try to wake up some days when I'm thinking about it and think, what mitzvah can I do today? Who can I call today that needs a call, or who can I, who might need some help, or things. I think it's certainly within our power to decide that we're going to do 1, 2, or 3 things outside of what we usually do.
Incredible. Incredible. I think you're gonna maybe disagree with me, Susan. I think it's easy. I think I'll explain why. I think it's easy. It's easy to think along these lines. What's hard is to always remember to have that level of consciousness. You need someone to remind you, because we go through our days, sometimes we go through our lives with this sense of just mindlessness. We're just aimlessly walking through the world without thinking of these things. But if you get someone to remind you about it, I think it's absolutely possible. I'll even go so far as to say easy, that a person, for a short period of time, can walk through their life, can walk through their day. I'm balanced. I'm 50%, 50%. And the next deed I do is going to tip the scales. Let me tip the scales positively, and let me perform something which would be meritorious for the entire world. You can't unmute or open the video. Try now. Try now, Fala. You wanted to add something? Am I able to unmute you? Let me see.
Can unmute yourself.
I can't unmute you, Fala.
You could
You have
just
to unmute
unmute
yourself.
yourself.
If you can't, you can't, but maybe you can write in the chat. Maybe you can write in the chat. Now, where does this leave us? Sorry, Susan, yes.
Tell her to tap the bottom of her screen, not just the
Video.
top. Tell her to go to tap the bottom.
Okay, I don't know if you're on an
And-
iPad, Fala, but if you're on an iPad,
There is a mute button, you just press it and
if you
unmute
tap the
yourself.
bottom of the screen, you might come up with a mute button. I'll let you figure that out. Now, where does this leave us? Where does this leave us? We've spoken about how a human being can be the center of the world. A human being can be the most important person that is sustaining the entire world, holding up the entire world. So does that mean that people are just special? Does that mean that people are just absolutely righteous and they're born that way and these people are so good? And where does that leave the rest of us? Because we know we're pretty mediocre. I want to read you a letter that was penned by one of the great rabbis of the 20th century. His name is Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner. Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner, originally from Eastern Europe, finds his way to America, and he will go on to be the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Chaim Berlin. Chaim Berlin is the name of the yeshiva, and he writes a letter to a student who seems to be struggling. And the student writes a letter saying, I keep failing at my personal tests and challenges. I keep falling down. I know that I'm supposed to be doing better in my life, and I keep failing. I'm a failure. Look at the response that Rabbi Hutner writes him in a letter. This is an incredible letter. He says as follows. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, sure.
There is a common misconception in our midst regarding our attitude to the appreciation of our great individuals. We tend to focus on their current elevated status, neglecting to recall the many mistakes and hardships they encountered on their path to greatness. Let's just pause there for a moment. When you look at somebody incredible, says Rabbi Hutner, the first thing that we tend to do, which is a mistake, he says, is see them as only great and only ever having been great, if not perfect, their entire lives. And this is how we look at people, especially when they're successful, especially when they're fabulous, especially when they're wonderful. You know, this is a very different example, and you'll excuse me from changing the example so dramatically, but it was the Grammys the other night. Did you see the Grammys? Did anybody watch this on television? And you see these people who are all dolled up and they're looking beautiful and they can sing fantastic and they're just perfect in the way that society now idolizes pop stars. They didn't start out that way. They didn't start out that way. Bringing it back to something more important than pop stars, the great people in our lives, the heroes of the spirit, the moral giants that we can mix with and interact with, we look at them and we say, wow, amazing, absolutely incredible. And we forget that actually they went through hardship. They went through difficulty. They actually made a series of mistakes, and perhaps repeatedly so, until they got to that level as being an incredibly special, wonderful, saintly human being. That's the first point that he makes in this letter. We mistakenly look at great people thinking they were always great. But look what he goes on. Look what he goes on to say. He says, King Solomon wrote, a righteous person falls 7 times, yet rises again. This is a very important verse. Take a look at the Hebrew. Sheva yipol sadik vakam. A righteous person falls 7 times, yet rises again. How does he interpret this verse? What does that mean to him? He says something genius. Look at the following. The uninformed assume the meaning to be that greatness can be achieved despite experiencing an occasional stumble. That's what he says is the mistaken way to read that verse. A righteous person falls 7 times, yet rises again. Okay, so you can be great despite having the occasional stumble. Look what he goes on to say. However, the wise know well that the verse's intention is to instruct us that the very path to greatness is solely attained by encountering obstacles and then overcoming them. This is so profound. You need to put this on your fridge. Email me after the class. I'll send you this source sheet, okay? Print it out and put this on your fridge. The phrase from Mishlei, the book of Proverbs, Sheva yipol sadik vakam, a righteous person falls 7 times yet rises again, means, according to Rabbi Hutner, the path to greatness is solely attained. You can't get there any other way. You want to be great, you want to achieve something worthy in this world, you could only achieve greatness by encountering obstacles again and again and again, and falling down as a result of those obstacles, failing, going through hardships. And each and every time, what do? You get up. You overcome. This is an amazing approach to life. Because what do? We get it wrong and we do it backwards. We fall and we experience a setback. And what do we say to ourselves? I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. Look how I'm failing. Look how I come up short. I'm not good enough. And each time we do that, we write ourselves off, and it's already too late for us because we've got a negative self-perception. King Solomon in the book of Mishlei says, the only way you can be successful, the only way you can be great is if actually you're failing. It's so counterintuitive. Do you hear the idea? You're following this idea? If you're failing, if you're falling down, what are you going to do next? You've got 2 paths in front of you. You can fall down and say, I'm a failure. Or you can fall down and say, now I'm going to get back up on my feet. And the path to becoming great is only by experiencing hardship. It's only by encountering difficulty. What happens when we encounter difficulty? What happens?
We get experience.
Again, Irene, sorry?
We get experience.
Yes, I was going to say a different word. That's correct. I was going to say a different word. What happens when we encounter hardship and difficulty?
Churchill is a very good example of what you're saying now. The
Churchill?
he felt many, many times, and he was a very good example of that concept.
Irene, you know who is more important and more relevant than Churchill?
Yeah.
Irene Roth. I'm talking about Irene Roth.
I'm very bad with that.
Don't
I failed and
go
gave
to
up.
don't go to Churchill. It's
I
so
gave up.
easy. You're right,
In my
Twyla.
life, I didn't follow that. I
You're
gave
right.
up many, many times.
Churchill is a great example of this, but you know what happens? You know why you're thinking of Churchill? Because it takes us off the hook if we think of a famous person or a world leader, or as long as it's someone else, it's not us. So right now, this is hard work, I know, and this is challenging, I know. I'm speaking about Irene Roth. I'm speaking
bad
about
example.
Susan. I'm speaking about Andrew. I'm speaking about Terry. I'm speaking about iPhone 5.
I like
Rabbi
but-
Fishman, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, because I'm having so much trouble with the computer. The video won't open. And it's the first time I've ever had that, and neither will the chat. But anyway,
No
now I'm on my
problem.
phone.
Who are you, iPhone 5?
Yeah. I'm
Is that
faceless.
Farla?
I'm faceless. It's Farla.
It's
But,
Farla. Okay, I thought I recognized the voice. Welcome, Farla.
Hi. But I just wanted to add, to me, you can achieve.
You're gonna change your name. I can't look at iPhone 5. There you go. Okay.
Sorry about that. But to me, the way anybody, most people, let's put it that way, can achieve a certain degree of greatness if they work hard enough, because no one knows what they're capable of until they do it, and then fall down, but keep trying. And I believe that you can get to great heights if you really want to and work at it.
And that is all true. The one word you didn't use, and I know that this is what you meant, but Eileen, Farla, the one word you didn't use was what happens when we experience challenge and setback and adversity. We grow. Growth.
Yes.
Growth. That was, I
That
know that's what
doesn't
you
make
meant,
sense.
Farla, and then you said exactly the same.
But also you realize your resilience, and that
Absolutely.
and you don't know that you can get up and push harder. But when you're pushed against a wall, whatever it may be,
Exactly.
you get up and you start over again.
The example I like to use is jumping over a big chasm. If I was to take you to a large jump and I walked you up to the edge and you look down over the lower level beneath you and I said, you've got to now jump to the other side, everybody would say, I can't do it.
Right.
I just can't do it.
Wouldn't do it.
And you're right if you say, I can't do it. Jumping to the other, I'm speaking metaphorically, of course. Like plug in between the lines your own personal life with whatever that chasm is, whatever that gap is, jump to the other side. If you say, I can't do it, then you won't. And that will be correct and accurate. But if, I think, Farley, you said if you're up against the wall, if you've got no choice, then somehow or other, through the hardship, you find yourself on the other side. Again, I'm not speaking about a physical jump. I'm not speaking about jumping
Right.
now. You understand? And the difficulty, the struggle, the getting ourselves to that other side, when we finally are there, only then do we look back and realize, my gosh, look what I have overcome.
But
Look
it is
what-
like it is like a sport in a way, and I don't think
Yes.
and for me, I don't think you should look at that chasm. I think that you can't think about that because that scares you to death.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, like when you run a marathon or anything you do, or you play tennis and you want to be on a team, or well, I don't know, you have to just keep working at it and just day by day.
It's through the struggle. It's through the struggle that we grow. There is a brilliant metaphor for this from the natural world. I wonder if you've heard this before. There was a rabbi called Abraham Twersky, interesting rabbi,
Tversky.
popular author. He came from a Hasidic dynasty, grew up in America, and he realized that Hasidim were not listening to their rabbis anymore. And he was slated to be the next Rebbe of his dynasty. And he said, people are not interested in Rebbes anymore. They don't go to listen to them. And he said, you know who people listen to? They listen to their therapists.
Yeah.
And so, like, long black coat, beard, pious, like he looks like a Hasidic Rebbe, exactly what you would imagine him to look like. He went to a secular university and became a medical doctor and then got a doctorate of psychiatry.
Tversky?
Twersky.
Yeah.
Twersky. It's a
W,
famous name
Yeah,
because
I heard it.
it's a famous Hasidic
Yeah.
dynasty. He has grandfathers, great-great-grandfathers, all very famous European Rebbes. And here he is. He passed away 4 or 5 years ago, like fairly recently, I think. And he said, no one listens to Rebbes anymore. People listen to therapists. I need to change my career. I need to be a psychiatrist. And he did. He graduated and was trained as a clinical psychiatrist at a medical level. He gives the following analogy. He said, now you'll excuse me for the example, but it's not mine, it's the Hasidic Rebbes, okay? What did he speak about? He spoke about lobster, of all things. I don't know how he came, I have no idea how he came onto this example, but this is what he said. He said, when a lobster is young, it outgrows its shell. And what it needs to do is actually get out of the initial shell it's born with, because it was only going to take it so far. And then it regrows a secondary shell to the larger size that it will grow to. There are 2 different stages in the shell of a lobster, apparently. I have no idea of, I've never verified this. I've just listened to him and I believe.
Interesting.
But listen to this. He says, when does the lobster know it's time to escape from its initial first shell? When it starts to hurt.
When?
When it starts to hurt.
But he has no control on it. It biologically happens by itself.
Apparently, a lobster is able to remove its initial shell and grow a secondary shell. Don't ask me the biology, Irene. This is just what the Hasidic Rebbe said. You know you can't ask a story on a Hasidic Maisa. This is how it goes.
I like that very much.
How do you grow? You know you're growing when it's hurting. And once you are in a place of struggle, the struggle is itself a sign of growth. The struggle is itself a sign of growth. And I think all of us know, just from having lived life, those experiences that were the most difficult for us enabled us to become greater as a result of those experiences. Now, we never wanted them. We don't invite hardship upon us. Yet somehow after the fact, when we're on the other side, you say to yourself, okay, I've grown. I'll give a third analogy. I'll give a third, with this we'll close, a third analogy. Imagine you are an alien from outer space and you visit planet Earth. And the first place you visit is a gym. And a person in the gym has a personal trainer. Not only are they such a mashugana, they go to the gym, but they're paying a personal trainer to shout at them when they're lifting weights. Now you're an alien and you're studying humans. You've landed from Mars. And what are you looking at? You're looking at a man screaming and shouting at a poor defenseless woman who's got these metal dumbbells and she has to lift them up over her head and he's screaming again, again. The person is sweating, the person is grunting, the person is like, and you're like, the torture, this is so unfair. Why is this human being hurting another human being? Only for you to then realize, not only does the person in the chair with the weights, not only did they volunteer to be there, but they're actually paying money to that personal trainer to shout at them and say, do another one, do another one, do it. And there's the person in pain, no question about it. Tears coming out of their eyes, sweat all over their head. That's growth. And that's building muscle. And when you go through that stress and strain, you come out bigger. You come out greater. This is the message of class 1. This is the message of class 1. We are able in our lives to grow. And we're able to grow as a result of the setbacks and the challenges and the falls that we have. And we should never say to ourselves, I'm failing. No. By definition, you're growing. And to bring it all the way back, who are you growing into? You're growing into the fullest version of yourself. You're growing into who you potentially can become. And that's the person you were born to be. Going all the way back to my introduction, whether it's King Arthur, whether it's Luke Skywalker, whether it's Harry Potter, I mean, whatever, the hero story of an ordinary person that is blessed with greatness inside of them, that's you and me. We need to believe this. We need to take our lives seriously. And we need to think, I can actually become the best version of myself.
Most people don't do that, Rabbi Fishman.
You're
Most
right.
people don't follow
You're
that.
right. That's why there's
Not at
6 of
all.
us here
Very
today
small
and not
percentage.
600. You're right.
Most people, when there is a struggle, find a way that you can bypass and make your life easier, and don't want to
That's
struggle.
the nature of the world today. We want the quick fix.
Quick fix, not a quick fix, but the easier way out.
The
People
7-minute
the way out.
exercise routine. What's popular today? The 7-minute exercise routine, the 21-day diet, the 5 quick steps to a new year. Like what we want. You know what I say about the quick fix? We're such a generation of quick. We want it instantly, and now we don't eat. Our food reflects this. What's the popular food today? Sushi. You know what sushi? We don't even want to wait to cook the food anymore. Just give me raw fish.
No, that's tasty. That's not for cooking.
I'm going to eat it raw. I don't even. Once upon a time, people cooked fish, and Jews. Well, we didn't just cook it. We then minced it and stuffed it again. That was the original gefilte fish. Think about how long it took Jews to cook fish.
Gift letters.
Nowadays, you can't go to a Jewish wedding without sushi. You know, it's a doubt whether the wedding was actually a real wedding or not. Did they have sushi? We don't even cook our fish in it. I'll swallow it raw. Yeah, so you're right, Irene. We're the generation of immediacy, of instantaneous, of quick. But the truth of the matter is, if we can put in work, then we can see our lives as 50-50 balanced. And then the next thing we do is going to tip the scales in our favor and tip the scales of the entire world.
I have to start my life all over.
And there's
No,
no
it's too
time
late.
like right now.
No, it's too late to do all that.
Irene,
I
it's
never-
not too late. It's not, that's the very message. Life starts now, this second. Doesn't matter about yesterday. Yesterday, it does not matter. Right now,
I didn't
right
want to
this second.
struggle. I didn't want to struggle. I wanted to avoid the problems, and I didn't do nothing of what you said. So my potential, I have 10% most probably of it.
Irene, you've got 100% waiting in store for you. Life starts now. That's the greatest
Great.
truth. The greatest truth. Life starts right now. Okay, think about it. I'm going to leave you here for today.
And when
It
is the
was-
next class
It was lovely
Next
to see
episode.
everybody. The next class, I will just
of that topic?
turn off our recording. One moment. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you next week.